Pleasure to be talking. Pleasure to be talking to everyone there in New Jersey. And I'm so happy to hear that you're having a wonderful early spring day. I'm going to show you what early spring in Wyoming looks like. This is the view outside my office window. Unfortunately, on a clear day, you'd be able to see mountains in the distance there, but the cloud cover is obscuring the beautiful view. But believe it or not, Easter morning, the temperature was in the mid 60s and there wasn't a flake of snow on the ground. All of this hit last night. So kind of a surprise to wake up to here. But anyway, I don't know if everyone heard this, but kind of my background here. I am the historian at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. I was born and raised here in Northwest Wyoming, and I have a strong connection to the history of the American West. In fact, my great-great-grandfather, John B. Goff, was a hunting guide for Theodore Roosevelt in Colorado in 1901 and 1905. And then he came up here, worked as a game warden in Yellowstone National Park, and eventually moved to Cody, Wyoming, where he worked for Buffalo Bill. So I've had a long interest in Roosevelt, Buffalo Bill, and the American West's history. And I just finished my PhD dissertation on Theodore Roosevelt and Buffalo Bill Cody's relationship, which surprising to me, the two men did not actually get along all that well. So one of these days, hopefully I can come back and talk about that enigmatic relationship. But today we're going to talk about Buffalo Bill. And what I've discovered in my presentations about Buffalo Bill Cody is people tend to not know a lot about Buffalo Bill, or they think they know a lot about Buffalo Bill because they've read a novel or seen one of the movies where he's a character. And so today we're going to touch a little bit on his life and legacy. And one thing we're really going to touch upon is how he shaped a lot of our perceptions of the American West.
Excuse me, Jeremy, are you going to share? I'm sorry, it's Donella. Are you going to share your screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me know, Donella, is that coming through?
Yep, remember to delay, and it's perfect. You can go right ahead. We can see you and the screen.
All right, perfect. Anything else comes up, just let me know. So, Buffalo Bill and the dramatization of Western history. Now, many people assume Buffalo Bill was just an actor. My screen seems to be locked up. There we go. And he was. So Buffalo Bill was an actor. He starred on the stage beginning in the early 1870s, marking the beginning of a acting career that lasted until his death in January 10th, 1917. So he spent a lot of years on the stage in the arena, reenacting what he had experienced in the American West. This is very unusual here because Buffalo Bill was an actor, but he was playing himself. So, and this all started when he came to the East, and he was in Chicago and New York. And it just so happened that in Chicago, he went to a play, and on the stage was a person pretending to be Buffalo Bill. Now, Buffalo Bill became a dime novel hero, was well known as an Indian scout or a scout for the Indian Army out here, the military out in the American West during the Indian Wars. So he's playing himself here, which makes it kind of unusual. Way I like to make a kind of a equivalent to today's world is you can imagine if John Wayne had actually fought at the Battle of Iwo Jima and then came back and made the film. You'd have the equivalent of what we have here in Buffalo Bill Cody pretending to be himself on stage. So about his life. Buffalo Bill was born February 26, 1846 in Iowa. And in Iowa, the family had a peaceful experience. And as you can see here, according to Buffalo Bill's autobiography, from which I drew all these illustrations here. He had kind of the standard life in the Midwest frontier. So getting in trouble at school, as you can see there, getting spanked by the principal, stealing a boat and getting stuck on the river, and then skipping stones. If this image here in the middle of the kid skipping stone looks familiar, that's because that image was also used for a fictional book that came out about the same time, written by Mark Twain, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So some of the illustrations kind of were used for both Buffalo Bill's autobiography and for the book Tom Sawyer. But anyway, life in Iowa met a tragic end here for the Cody family. Buffalo Bill's brother, you can see him here on the back of a horse, was showing off to his classmates, and the horse reared up on him and crushed him and killed poor Samuel. The grief-stricken family decided they needed to leave the area, and they could not have selected a more violent place to live at that point in time, it was the 1850s, than Kansas. So Kansas was right in the middle of this political question regarding the expansion of slavery into the Western territories. Stephen Douglas had passed what was known as popular sovereignty, that basically each territory would decide whether or not it would be a free state or a slave state. And when they arrive in Kansas, Isaac Cody, Buffalo Bill's father, as you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, was asked to share his views on whether or not Kansas should become a slave territory or a free territory. He stood up on the soapbox and he basically declared that he wanted Kansas to be a free territory and a free state. We're not 100% sure because the information is conflicting if Isaac was opposed to slavery or just opposed to the expansion of slavery. That's unclear. Some of the Cody's sisters say he was against slavery. Cody in his autobiography made it clear he was more opposed to the expansion of slavery, but we're not really 100% sure. But what we do know is that the remark that he said that day drew out one of the audience members, who grabbed a knife and stabbed Isaac in the chest. Now, Isaac survived the stabbing, but because of this wound, his health was never quite right afterwards. And a few years later, he died from one of the illnesses that came through there, leaving the Cody family without a father. Being that Buffalo Bill was now the oldest son, he took it upon himself to care for his mother and his sisters. And at this time, you know, he was encountering a lot of violence. So ruffians from Missouri would ride up to his house in the middle of the night, threaten to kill his father. You see in this one image here, his father is trying to escape through the cornfield. Or you can see that Cody himself being identified as one of those free staters, a jayhawker from Kansas, was being chased down by a mob here. Of course, it's also at this time that Buffalo Bill meets another individual that he's often confused with. This is Wild Bill Hickok. James Butler Hickok was in Kansas at the same time, and like many Americans, was shaped by the violent activities in Kansas. James Butler Hickok was in a lot of violent conflicts, a lot of it stemming over this debate regarding slavery's expansion. Here you can see Buffalo Bill or Wild Bill Hickok being depicted in one of the first known gunfights held in an American city or American frontier town. This was back in Missouri. And anyway, he shot an opponent who just so happened to be one of those Missouri ruffians that the Kansas people were fighting against. So Cody shifts from this peaceful life in Iowa to this very violent life in Kansas. It's also at this time that Buffalo Bill heads west. Being that he's the oldest boy in the family, he needs to earn a living, and he starts working for Russell, Majors and Waddell, who was a freighting firm that was bringing goods across the country, taking supplies to the gold fields in the Denver, Colorado area, the Pikes Peak region there. And Buffalo Bill worked on these freighting teams, basically as a messenger. And then eventually worked his way up into the freighting business. 1860, when Russell Majors and Waddell launched a new communication venture called the Pony Express, Buffalo Bill said he was involved in this process, that he was a Pony Express rider. And it's at that time, again, he's exposed to further violence.
Having trouble connecting to the internet.
Oh.
Check your Wi-Fi network connection by going to settings.
Sorry, my Amazon Alexa is talking to me here. So
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. Check your Wi-Fi network connection.
there, hopefully we got it shut down. So, but anyway, again, encountering a lot of other violent people such as Alf Slade, who was a vicious master of the Pony Express there. He actually was renowned for killing a guy and then slicing his ears off and carrying him around in his pocket as a souvenir. So that's the type of violence we're seeing here at this point in time. Buffalo Bill was also encountering a lot of the American Indians in the West. As a young boy, he was trapping with a friend. He broke his leg and encountered Chief Rain in the Face, as you can see there in this illustration. Also spent some time rafting down the Platte River, again, hauling supplies back and forth. Now, one of the biggest debates about Buffalo Bill's life is whether or not he rode for the Pony Express, and I'm going to come back to that here in a minute. But anyway, in his autobiography, he described all sorts of these Western adventures. And by the way, the autobiography was just released as a scholarly edition by University of Nebraska Press through the papers of William F. Cody that I oversee here at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. And again, all of these illustrations come from that work, but here you can see he encountered horse thieves. He supposedly killed his first Indian when he was 12 years old as a freighter. He got involved in the so-called Mormon War, when soldiers were sent sent across the West to basically curtail the expansion of polygamy there that was practiced by the Mormons in Salt Lake, and then capturing horse thieves as well, as you see here. We're not 100% sure how accurate many of these stories are. If these were things that Buffalo Bill actually experienced, if they're things he may have heard from other people on the trail, or if they were added by the publisher just to supplement his life story. But after the Civil War comes to an end, and by the way, Buffalo Bill did volunteer to fight in the Civil War for the Kansas Cavalry. It's not a very glamorous story he tells about volunteering for the war effort. Basically what happened is after his mother passed away, he went on a drinking spree. And the next morning, a very hungover young William Cody woke up and found out that that night he enlisted in the Army and was now a soldier. So he did fight in Missouri, eventually went to St. Louis, worked in the Civil War hospital where he met his wife, Louisa. The two of them married and eventually had 4 children. After the Civil War, Buffalo Bill again returned to the West. It was actually Wild Bill Hickok that recommended he come out west and serve as an Army scout. The Civil War had really stirred up the Indian Wars here in the American West, because basically what you had happening is a lot of the regular soldiers stationed at the military posts that were tasked with keeping the peace were sent to the east to fight in the main conflict. When these soldiers were leaving, a lot of the Lakota, the Cheyenne, assumed the war was over and they just needed to push out these other white settlers. However, a lot of Western volunteers from places like California started moving in, and these Western settlers had the attitude that only good Indian is a dead Indian, and really started attacking even peaceful Indians such as the Cheyenne who were camped at Sand Creek. And so by the time the Civil War is ended, the US government is trying to rebuild its relationship with a lot of the American Indian nations here in the Great Plains because of the conflicts that were stirred up during the Civil War. So Buffalo Bill comes out as a scout. In his off time, he tries investing in various business ventures. He tries running a hotel, he flops at that. He tries building a town, which you can see here, called Rome, Kansas. However, when Buffalo Bill could not strike a deal with the railroad company, the Kansas Pacific Railroad, the railroad company moved the tracks, and Hays City basically took the place of Rome, leaving Buffalo Bill and his partner penniless. At that time, Buffalo Bill decided he would hunt buffalo. He would provide buffalo for the workers building the railroad across Kansas. And it's at that time he picks up the name Buffalo Bill. The reason why they named him Buffalo Bill, if you're a railroad worker and all you're eating day in and day out is buffalo meat, you get sick of it. So they came up with a little rhyme about Buffalo Bill never misses and he never will. And the railroad always pays his Buffalo Bill. And then they go back to their buffalo steak. So that's how he picks up the name. Let's stop here. Were there any questions? All right, so hearing none.
It's a great history, really. I knew nothing about what you're saying. I think this is super. Thank you, Jeremy.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, anyway, so his early life, the thing I really wanted to convey is that, this is an individual who did live a life in the American West, had some exciting adventures, probably exaggerated some of those tales that he told later on about those feats. But as a scout for the military, Buffalo Bill soon rises to national fame. And it's really quite a transition here. So pretty soon, people all across the United States are going to hear about Buffalo Bill. And it begins in the dime novels, which then will lead to his stage acting career, which will then lead to Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And the poster that you see here with Buffalo Bill on both sides, there just really kind of shows you his commanding presence. And by the way, if you ever wondered what Buffalo Bill sounded like, if you go to our archive, codyarchive.org, there's an audio section there where you can listen to a recording of Buffalo Bill's voice. And he actually sounds like a Shakespearean actor. He doesn't sound like Slim Pickens or a sidekick. He sounds very much like a Shakespearean actor, a very deep, resounding voice that would have projected across the arena and really impressed a lot of people. So kind of a unique combination of being able to convey drama to large audiences and then having that frontier background, which gave him a lot of credibility. And to this day, I call it job security. We're still trying to sort out what was authentic and what was dramatized here in the life and career of Buffalo Bill Cody. But as an Indian fighter, this is where he really starts to rise to prominent fame. Starting on the left here, you see an event depicted in this illustration, the killing of Tall Bull. Tall Bull was a Cheyenne dog soldier who had been stirred up during the Civil War after the Sand Creek Massacre. And at the battle at Summit Springs, where Cody served as a guide, Buffalo Bill noted that there was a horse that he really wanted, and this warrior was riding it. And he said, you know what, I'm going to shoot that Indian and take his horse. So he did. And later on, when he brought the horse to the captured Indian encampment, Tall Bull's wife started crying because that was her husband's horse. And Cody took credit for killing Tall Bull, as did many other people who were there as well. But this event brought Cody to the attention of a dime novelist by the name of Ned Buntline. And Ned Buntline came out west wanting to write about this battle and about Buffalo Bill Cody, which he did. And lo and behold, Buffalo Bill, King of the Bordermen, appeared in print back east. So he's making that initial step towards becoming a celebrity. The military, which by the way, at the time realized that these Indian wars are not really good for our reputation. I know today we look back at this as really a terrible time period in our nation's past. And at the time, there was still a lot of debate, especially in the East, about whether or not we're justified in all these actions against the American Indian people out here. The military realized Buffalo Bill, being a hero, could enhance their reputation. And they had him doing all sorts of things. He served as a hunting guide. In 1872, he guided Grand Duke Alexis from Russia. He came out here on a big buffalo hunt. He actually served as a guide for a hunting party of Eastern businessmen, including Winston Churchill's grandfather, and also the James Gordon Bennett Jr., who ran the New York newspaper, the New York Herald. So he's getting even more attention here as a hunting guide. And that's what leads him to the East, where he sees a guy pretending to be Buffalo Bill on stage. Ned Buntline and others decide you need to become an actor. So for the time being, he actually served as a scout when he was out in the West and an actor when he was back East. He bought a home in Rochester, New York, lived there for a while. And then in 1876, things really become interesting. 1876 is the year that of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, which we popularly known as Custer's Last Stand, occurs. Buffalo Bill and the military come out to the plains to try and control the Lakota, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho, who had defeated Custer. And at the Battle of Warbonnet Creek in 1876, as you can see here, Buffalo Bill fights a duel with Chief Yellowhand. Probably one of the biggest surreal events that ever occurred in our nation's past. If you were a soldier there witnessing this day, you see Buffalo Bill, who was wearing a stage costume out in the middle of the plains of Nebraska. In fact, it's described as a vaquero costume, black pants with silver piping, a bright red shirt. He gets out there, he fights this Cheyenne warrior Yellowhand, kills him, takes his scalp and holds it up and says, "First scalp for Custer." After that, he goes back to the East and recreates this scene using the real scalp. So audiences sitting there watching this are having a really hard time figuring out, okay, where does the drama begin and the authenticity end here? I mean, how do we separate these out? You know, this guy is basically recreating an event that he participated in just a few months ago. And in my opinion, it's that combination of authenticity and drama that really made Cody unique. And he decided the stage was too limiting. He wanted to really demonstrate to his audiences the grand spectacle of the American Western experience. So in 1883, he launched Buffalo Bill's Wild West. He started out with Doc Carver. However, he and Doc Carver only lasted one season. He then partnered with Nate Salisbury, who was an actor from the East, and the two of them formed this Wild West extravaganza. The high point of Buffalo Bill's career is when he took this show to London and appeared before Queen Victoria. So here you can see the poster depicting his appearance before Queen Victoria on May 11th, 1887. Buffalo Bill claimed this was the first time the British monarch had saluted the American flag, which you can see in the background there. Now, I attended the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, Scotland, and when I mentioned this to my Scottish colleagues, they pointed out that Queen Victoria was prone to nod off to sleep. And so they don't think she really saluted the flag. They think she may have just kind of fallen asleep and then someone fired a pistol and woke her up. Buffalo Bill said, you know, she nodded towards the flag. It's a salute. We'll take it. So you can believe what you want to believe on that. But here, I want you to notice down here in the corner here, see how many people were seated in the arena watching the show? 20,000 people, 20,000 people. And that was pretty common for Buffalo Bill's Wild West in the early years. You had thousands and thousands of people watching this spectacle. And although this happened over 100 years ago, it really still influences how we see the American West. If you've seen the movie, The Greatest Showman, the life story of P.T. Barnum, I'm going to argue that actually Buffalo Bill Cody, especially when it comes to the American West, may have been an even greater showman than P.T. Barnum. I love this image here on the left. This is Buffalo Bill's office at the Irma Hotel here in Cody, Wyoming. And you'll see up in the corner here a portrait, and there's a close-up of the portrait. There's P.T. Barnum looking over Buffalo Bill's shoulder. So he was very aware of P.T. Barnum's success, and in many ways he replicated that in interpreting the American West. So how does this impact our views of the West today? I mentioned one of the biggest debates about Buffalo Bill is whether or not he rode for the Pony Express. So we're not sure. We have no idea if his claim of riding for the Pony Express was true or not. Some say he did, some say he didn't. The problem is there's no business records left for the Pony Express. Pony Express only lasted for a year and a half. Only lasted for a year and a half, and then it failed. It went bankrupt because new technology replaced it. When they built the telegraph line across the country, there was no need for the Pony Express, which was very expensive, by the way, in shipping a letter across the country. I mean, they were charging excessive amounts per ounce for just a letter here. Buffalo Bill, however, recreates the Pony Express relay ride on a nightly basis before thousands of people. I'm going to put it this way, I can't see your hands, but I'm just imagining there's no one in the audience today that has not heard of the Pony Express. So if you've heard of the Pony Express, you need to thank Buffalo Bill, because not only did he recreate it in the show, but it becomes important. Later on, Hollywood television replicate the same thing that he was performing in the Wild West arena over and over again. And it is interesting to note, there was a television program, it lasted for 3 seasons, called Young Riders. You know, if you watched Young Riders, that was on the air longer than the real Pony Express lasted. So it's a very powerful myth, thanks to Buffalo Bill Cody. The Plains Indians Wars. Buffalo Bill really sensationalized the Plains Indian Wars. Unfortunately, being that this was a drama, although it was dramatizing real events, in many ways, the American Indians were depicted as the bad guys. So they were the savages on the plains that needed to be defeated by the US military. And that image takes hold and becomes very popular well until the 1960s and 1970s in popular entertainment. So 1960s, 70s with the civil rights movement, the Indian civil rights movement, the AIM movement in the 1970s, things begin to change, and we have a very different view of the Indian Wars. But Buffalo Bill really did just a powerful job, a very effective job in depicting the Indian Wars for the country for many years after his acting came to an end. So in here you can see the Battle of Summit Springs being recreated there. Very different than what Buffalo Bill actually experienced. So, and also to give more credibility to his performances recreating the Indian Wars, Buffalo Bill was able to secure the services of Sitting Bull, the famed Umpapa Lakota leader, who was at the Battle of the Little Bighorn and was often credited for being the one who masterminded Custer's defeat. So here you can see Sitting Bull, Buffalo Bill. In the middle there is our pretty standard view of Custer's last stand. And if you look at a lot of the American Indian testimony about what happened that day at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, it looked nothing like this. It wasn't quite the last stand. I hate to spoil this notion that Cody and others created, but American Indians were pretty smart when it came to fighting, and they weren't about to ride horses and circle around a bunch of guys with weapons firing at them, dropping off their horse one by one. Okay, at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, they were using the ravines, the brush, sneaking up there and arcing their arrows in on top of Custer's men. But again, thousands and thousands of people see Cody's depiction of the Battle of Little Bighorn, of Custer's Last Stand, and that becomes ingrained in our popular culture. Now I'm going to step back because the other side of Buffalo Bill that a lot of people don't know about, they're familiar with his dramatization of the Indian Wars, but actually he was a pretty good employer, especially for the Lakota performers who worked with him, including Sitting Bull and others like Chief Irontail right here, who was the model of the Indian on the buffalo nickel. A lot of these Lakota warriors who worked with Buffalo Bill really enjoyed this experience of traveling the United States, traveling the world. It was a wonderful opportunity for them. They were gainfully employed. They were able to send money back to the reservation. And if you think about what's going on in the reservations in the aftermath of the Indian Wars, here you have the Department of Indian Affairs basically forbidding your language from being spoken, forbidding religious ceremonies, making you become a farmer in wonderful farming ground like Western South Dakota and North Dakota, okay? It was tough. It was a tough transition for a lot of these people, however, that performed with Buffalo Bill's Wild West. They were able to really highlight their culture. They were able to meet all sorts of audiences, show what was, show their skills, their crafts, their clothing. And, Buffalo Bill actually had an Indian encampment where people could wander through and meet the Lakota. So it's kind of a strange dichotomy going on here, is that while they're being depicted as savages in the arena, people were able to come in and meet them face to face and kind of get a better understanding of their culture. And Buffalo Bill, it is amazing and working here at the center today, but many Lakota performers' ancestors will show up and they're quite proud that their people worked with Buffalo Bill Cody. This is one of my favorite photos. This is actually Buffalo Bill when he had gotten involved in film. He's trying to make a movie on the Indian Wars. And here you can see he's goofing around with a group of Lakota children. And I just love the look on everyone's faces here. They're grinning, they're smiling, they're just having a good time. So you can tell that this was a partnership that worked out for both Buffalo Bill Cody and the Lakota performers involved with his enterprise. All right, back to the show. Another scene that Buffalo Bill recreated that has become so ingrained in the popular imagery of the American West is the attack of the Deadwood stagecoach. Now, if you traveled to the West in the 1870s and went to the Black Hills, to the gold mining regions of Deadwood, and you rode by stagecoach, your chances of getting attacked with Indians are very slim. You had a greater chance of being attacked by bandits, by stagecoach robbers than you did Indians. Going through studying attacks on stagecoaches, this only happened a handful of times in the history of the American West. A lot of these stagecoach companies were pretty smart. They realized if we're having Indian problems, we're just going to move the stage line, or we're going to stop operations till the Army can come in and clean things up. But again, Buffalo Bill recreates this on a nightly basis before thousands of people. So next time you watch an old Western movie, guarantee they're probably going to have the stagecoach being attacked by Indians there. In fact, you can see not only does that impact the United States, but we have this wonderful Buffalo Bill Wild West poster from France, where he's recreating the same thing. And even to this day, a lot of the European countries, their image of the American West comes from Buffalo Bill. Okay, again, I can't really see you, but if I were to ask how many of you played Cowboys and Indians, you'd probably be able to raise your hands and say, yeah, we played that. And of course, if you played Cowboys and Indians like I did, more than likely the biggest debate was who got to be the Cowboys and who got to be the Indians, because you already knew who was going to win the conflict. The Cowboys were the heroes. The Cowboys were the ones who defeated the Indians. So you wanted to be them. So I've noticed kids today, they actually want to be Indians, which is a great transition. But back then, cowboys were seen as the heroes, and a lot of this was due to Buffalo Bill's Wild West. Before Buffalo Bill's Wild West, a lot of people viewed cowboys as Hell's Angels on horseback. These were the guys who, after a long trail drive, would ride into town, get drunk, chase women, shoot up the town, cause all sorts of problems. And people like Wild Bill Hickok had to come in and basically restore law and order. People did not like cowboys. And how bad were those cowboys? Well, in 1881, believe it or not, because of issues in New Mexico and Arizona with people like Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp facing the cowboys there, the President of the United States, Chester A. Arthur, actually asked Congress for assistance in curtailing this band of outlaws in the Southwest known as the Cowboys. So, and if you've seen the movie Tombstone, you see that image of the cowboys as the bad guys coming out in that film there. But at the time, this was pretty common. People did not want cowboys coming into their lands, okay, coming into their towns. Cowboys were bad. But thanks to a few people, that image began to change. It happens with Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, when he comes out to the Badlands of North Dakota, writes some positive depictions of Buffalo Bill, or the cowboys. And then a guy by the name of Frederick Remington was asked to draw some images for Roosevelt's articles on the American West, including this one here. You can see the besieged cowboys. This is an early poster of Buffalo Bill's Wild West, and this illustration was originally completed by Frederick Remington for Theodore Roosevelt's book, Ranch Life and the Hunting Trail. But anyway, here you can see the cowboys are being attacked by Indians. And this was supposedly based on a real event here in Wyoming on the other side of the Bighorn Mountains, where a group of cowboys led by Nelson Story were attacked by Cheyenne and Lakota warriors. But anyway, as you can see, Buffalo Bill's Wild West continues this theme to where cowboys are the heroes. And believe it or not, in the Indian attacks, the attack on the stagecoach, attack on the homesteader cabins, it wasn't Buffalo Bill leading the U.S. cavalry in to save the day. It was Buffalo Bill leading the cowboys in to save the day. So cowboys, thanks to Roosevelt, Remington, and others, start to become popular heroes and soon become America's common hero throughout our entire country and abroad. So this image again was taken all across the world. There's some wonderful studies where films actually shown in Africa in the 1950s after the war. The Pony Express starring Charlton Heston as Buffalo Bill led to the creation of these gangs in Africa based on Western characters. They call themselves the Buffalo Bills, the Wild Bills, kind of recreating what they were seeing here in the Wild West. And don't forget the vaqueros. Buffalo Bill was very good in publicizing the vaqueros' contribution to the American West. You know, at a time when there's all sorts of revolutions in Mexico and the Mexican bandito image was very common, Buffalo Bill portrayed the vaqueros as very qualified Westerners, ones that were very good at riding horses, very good at handling cattle, and basically the precursors of the American cowboys. And there were quite a few Mexican celebrities, including these people you see here that performed for Buffalo Bill's Wild West, including Joe Esquivel, who taught Will Rogers how to rope and made him a roping celebrity. And then the ladies. So cowgirls were very important in the Wild West as well. So here you see some of the Wild West performers. You probably recognize the lady on the right here. This is Annie Oakley. And then the one in the middle was her competitor, Lillian Smith. And these women were basically put in situations where they were demonstrating their skills of shooting. And many times Annie Oakley would best Johnny Baker, the cowboy kid, who she was often competing against. Now, Buffalo Bill was a pretty astute performer. He realized he didn't want to put himself in a position where he had to compete against these ladies. So he never would shoot against Annie Oakley. Okay. She was off as her own celebrity. And she kind of came and went with Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And really the two of them cross promoted each other's careers. Now, Buffalo Bill's later years are kind of depressing. He made a fortune with Buffalo Bill's Wild West. However, he invested it in the American West, spent a lot of money on a mine in Arizona, and basically lost quite a bit of his investments. So he was never able to retire. So in later years, he had partnered with Pawnee Bill and began a series of farewell tours, which seemingly never ended. In fact, he almost became like the Rolling Stones today. One farewell tour after another. So, but anyway, he was performing until just a few months before he passed away. And as you can see, it did take a great toll on him. In 1913, he lost Buffalo Bill's Wild West. It was seized for non-payment of a poster bill. He was forced to join a circus, the Sells Floto Circus, and basically was brought out almost like a sideshow attraction. 1916, he did get involved in the military preparedness campaign. This is right before America enters World War I. And he traveled around with the 101 ranch shows that were organized by the Miller brothers. And again, you think about what he'd witnessed in his life. The image there on the left shows Buffalo Bill greeting an individual who's showing him how an airplane looks, how an airplane works. And Buffalo Bill was so impressed after watching this individual fly his airplane, he pulled out a gold nugget that he had found in the Denver, Colorado area as a young boy and gave it to this pilot, this young pilot, kind of passing the mantle there. So we're going from the old American frontier to the new frontier of air and space in that image there. He did try to move into film. And again, this didn't quite work out for Buffalo Bill. He starred in some films as himself. His last major project was a complete history of the Indian Wars that really kind of flopped. The reason for that is Buffalo Bill played himself. He wanted to be the celebrity, and at this point in time, he was getting up there in years. And unfortunately, we don't have any footage left of the Indian Wars. We do have some stills, but we can tell in the earlier films that he had been in about, performing and so forth, he had a hard time getting on his horse. He basically was in his late 60s trying to be a young man, and it just didn't come across on the camera. It really kind of flopped for him. But other people took note, and soon Hollywood begins taking the part of the Wild West shows, conveying a lot of what he had depicted in the Wild West show now on the silver screen, which then television will pick up later. Now, it's kind of interesting, Buffalo Bill, who had done so much to dramatize the American West, becomes a victim of his own product. I noted that he had basically conveyed the idea that the Indians were the ones to blame for the Indian Wars. They were the savages, the cowboys were the heroes. 60s and 70s, popular culture switches the hats. Buffalo Bill now becomes the bad guy. And I don't know how many of you seen the film Buffalo Bill and the Indians or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, starring Paul Newman as Buffalo Bill, but it really shows what happened to that image of Buffalo Bill by the mid-1970s. This was based on a film called The Indians by Arthur Kopit, which really depicted Buffalo Bill's role in defeating the American Indians and kind of convey the idea that he's exploiting them further by making them perform in the show. But before you go out and rent the movie, if you haven't seen it yet, and by the way, it's such a great movie, I think you can get it for free online about anywhere now. And I love Paul Newman, but the movie is it's really not that great. But I want to share with you the last words Buffalo Bill wrote. In his life, he had published 3 autobiographies. This is from the last one. And this is basically his statement about his role in the Indian Wars. In concluding, his autobiography, I want to express the hope that the dealings of this government of ours with the Indians will always be just and fair. They were the inheritors of the land that we live in. They were not capable of developing it or really appreciating its possibilities, but they owned it when the white man came and the white man took it away from them. It was natural that they should resist. It was natural that they employed the only means of warfare known to them against those whom they regarded as usurpers. It was our business as scouts to be continually on the warpath against them when they committed depredations, but no scout ever hated the Indians in general. And it's unfortunate that these complex views held by Buffalo Bill are now overshadowed by films like Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or the television series Buffalo Girls, Buffalo Gals, that was written by the late Larry McMurtry, where they depict Buffalo Bill as a womanizer, a fancy showman, and that's it. Another lasting legacy, wrapping this up, that I wanted to share with the group today. This is the place where I live. It's grown a little since this photo was taken in the early 1900s, but this is Cody, Wyoming in about 1910, shortly before Buffalo Bill. And this is one of Buffalo Bill's lasting legacies. It was founded in 1896 by George W.T. Beck and Buffalo Bill. By the way, we just published George Beck's memoir. That is available through the series we run through the papers. Donnell, I hope you're keeping notes on this and getting these books into your library. I know this is a shameless plug. So,
Okay.
But anyway, 1910, even with Buffalo Bill's role in promoting the town, its population was only 1,132. Okay, today it's not that much bigger. Today's population in Cody town limits is 8,835. Probably another 16,000. Well, another 8,000 living in the surrounding area here around Cody in the countryside. But anyway, we are a small town, Wyoming. And by the way, Wyoming's population today of the entire state is just a little over 500,000. So you guys can drive within a couple hours and be in cities that are larger than Wyoming in regard to population. But in 1917, the Buffalo Bill Memorial Association was formed here. And due to Buffalo Bill's popularity, this community was able to pull off something that's really quite spectacular. This is what the Buffalo Bill Center of the West looks like in the summer. It's a little greener than what I just showed you a while ago. But anyway, this museum that I work at today is 300,000 square feet. It has 5 museums: the Buffalo Bill Museum, which was the first, the Whitney Museum of Western Art, Cody Firearms Museum, the Plains Indian Museum, and the Draper Museum of Natural History. So covering all sorts of gamuts of the American West, the Yellowstone ecosystem, all sorts of displays dedicated to those areas of study. We also have the McCracken Research Library, which houses the papers of William F. Cody. So we get 175,000 visitors, mostly in the summer months. A lot of people travel through in their way to Yellowstone National Park. So we have 4,000 members of our association, 80 full-time staff, over 100,000 historical objects. Not all of them are on display, but anyway, 100,000 objects within our collections, 500,000 historical photos, 30,000 books, and 2,000 linear feet of documents and records. So as our former senator from Wyoming, Al Simpson, used to say, now, this is a great example of what Western people can do with Eastern money. Thanks to Buffalo Bill's publicity and his connections to places in New York City, including those to the Whitney family, we were able to secure the funds necessary to build what would be a museum that was probably better suited for a major metropolitan area here in small town Wyoming. So if you get the chance, I encourage all of you to please come out and visit us. Share the links here for the Cody Archive, Cody Studies, and the Center of the West. My email as well, if you want to follow up. And if you do come out here, please drop me a line, let me know. I'll give you some of the inside tour for those of you that mentioned that you survived one of my presentations.